Most people dream of millions, yet they never master the first 500,000. They chase fantasy wealth, not real independence. You don't need $5 million to escape the rat race. You just need discipline, patience, and $500,000. That's the point where money starts working harder than you do. And most never get there because they never learn how simple it actually is. Berkeley, you see, everyone wants to talk about making millions. Almost no one wants to talk about the first $500,000 because that's the part that demands character. It's the hardest money you'll ever make. Not because the math is complicated, but because your own behavior is. Earning that first $500,000 teaches you how to think, how to wait, and how to stop being your own worst enemy. That's the true education of wealth. People like to believe wealth creation is about intelligence or luck. It isn't. It's about endurance. It's about who can stay consistent the longest while everyone else gets distracted. The reason the first $500,000 feels impossible is because you're fighting against every natural instinct you have. The desire for instant gratification, the impulse to show progress, the pressure to keep up with others. You're not just building capital, you're building emotional discipline. Most people sabotage themselves early. They save for 6 months, then reward themselves with a new phone. They invest for a year, then panic when the market drops. They want results faster than reality allows. But compounding is slow, painfully slow at first. You don't feel rich, you feel restrained. That's why the majority quit. They think patience is passive, but it's the most active form of control there is. When you're earning that first $500,000, the real lesson is how to ignore noise. The world will keep shouting new cars, new gadgets, new investments, new opportunities. But every time you say no, you strengthen your financial immune system. You're teaching yourself to delay pleasure, to separate wants from needs, to understand that comfort comes after control. Once you've mastered that, the next stages become almost effortless. And here's what most people don't understand. You don't get rich by increasing your income alone. You get rich by increasing your capacity to handle boredom. Building wealth isn't exciting. It's repetitive. It's a quiet grind, saving, investing, reinvesting, watching small sums grow. The thrill seekers jump in and out. The patient ones stay in long enough for compounding to start working its invisible magic. That first $500,000 also teaches you humility. You realize how easily you can lose money through bad decisions or emotions. You realize that markets don't care about your plans or feelings. You stop chasing quick gains and start appreciating slow, steady progress. You stop predicting and start preparing. You begin to understand that intelligence in investing isn't about knowing everything. It's about avoiding stupidity. And make no mistake, stupidity is expensive. The biggest cost in most people's financial lives isn't taxes or inflation. It's their own behavior. They trade too often, borrow too easily, and spend too much trying to impress people who don't care. Once you've worked hard to build that first $500,000, you never look at money the same way again. Every dollar feels like a little worker you don't want to waste. You stop thinking about spending and start thinking about ownership, compounding, and protection. The first $500,000 is where you earn your stripes. It's the tuition fee for financial independence. The process will test your patience, your ego, and your ability to stay rational when everyone else is losing their mind. But once you've done it, once you've truly earned it, something profound shifts inside you. You no longer chase money out of fear. You build it out of understanding. And that's the moment money starts working for you, because you finally stop working against yourself. You know, one of the biggest traps in modern life is this obsession with looking rich instead of being rich. We live in an age where people measure success by the things they can show, not the freedom they can feel. You scroll through social media and everyone looks like they're winning. Vacations, cars, restaurants, gadgets. But underneath that surface, most are drowning in debt, terrified of losing the image they've built. They're not free. They're trapped by their own display. And that's the great irony. The more people try to look wealthy, the further they drift from actually becoming wealthy. When you're on the journey to your first $500,000, you have to make a choice. Do you want admiration or independence? You can't have both. The admiration is instant. It comes with a purchase, a post, a moment of attention. Independence takes years, maybe decades, but once you have it, no one can take it from you. That's why I say the true test of intelligence isn't how well you earn, it's how well you can delay applause. People burn fortunes chasing validation. They buy cars that depreciate the moment they leave the lot. They upgrade phones that work perfectly fine. They move into houses that are bigger than their lives require. Every decision is about signaling, showing the world they've made it. But the truth is, wealth doesn't need to announce itself. Quiet money is the real power. It's the man in simple clothes who owns the building, not the man in designer brands renting an apartment. You see, when you focus on accumulation, your energy goes toward building systems that last. You start thinking in terms of decades, not weekends. You stop worrying about how you appear today and start focusing on how secure you'll be tomorrow. That kind of mindset creates a natural filter. You no longer want what everyone else has because you see the hidden cost behind it. That new car might feel good now, but it robs your future self of opportunity. Every unnecessary purchase delays your freedom. And it's not just about frugality, it's about alignment. Every dollar you save and invest brings you closer to independence. Every dollar you waste on ego pulls you further away. The hardest part isn't earning the money, it's not spending it foolishly once you do. That's where most people fail. They see a little success and immediately raise their lifestyle to match it. Their ego outpaces their assets. They start working for status instead of stability. And once you do that, you've already lost control. True wealth has nothing to prove. It's quiet, patient, often invisible. The people who really win the game are the ones who play it with calm restraint. They understand that money is a tool, not a trophy. It's meant to buy freedom, not furniture. And that's a mindset very few ever develop because it requires self-control in a world that celebrates indulgence. If you can resist the urge to flex, you give compounding the space to work. That's the secret. Every unnecessary purchase today is a small theft from your future self. Every time you hold back and reinvest, you're giving your future self a raise. It's not glamorous, it's not thrilling, but it's transformative. The people who reach financial independence aren't necessarily the smartest. They're the ones who had the strength to stay boring. So if you want to reach that first $500,000, stop performing and start building. Let others chase impressions while you chase results. You don't owe anyone the illusion of success. You owe yourself the reality of freedom. And remember this. Every time you choose growth over display, you're making a silent trade that only the wise can see. You're buying your independence, one quiet decision at a time. You know, people love talking about compound interest as if it's some sort of magic trick. They quote Einstein calling it the eighth wonder of the world, but very few actually experience its power. Not because they don't understand the math. The math is simple, but because they can't control themselves long enough to let it work. The problem isn't compound interest itself, it's human impatience. Everyone wants compounding, but no one wants to wait for it. Think about it. Compounding is a process that rewards consistency and punishes interference. The more you mess with it, the less it rewards you. It's like growing a tree. You can't keep digging it up to check the roots every week. But that's what most people do with their investments. They touch their portfolios, switch strategies, chase trends, panic when markets dip, and celebrate when they rise, as if emotion has anything to do with compounding. They interrupt the very mechanism that could have made them wealthy. And this isn't just about money, it's about temperament. Real wealth requires a certain psychological stillness, a capacity to endure long stretches of boredom and doubt. When you're compounding, nothing exciting seems to happen for years. You invest, you save, you reinvest, and for a long time it feels like you're standing still. That's where most people quit. They want visible progress, immediate gratification. They don't realize that the curve of compounding is quiet at first, almost invisible, and then suddenly it explodes upward. But only for those who stayed put. The people who win in investing aren't necessarily the smartest. They're the most patient. They know that time is the real multiplier, not intelligence. You can be brilliant, but if you're impatient, you'll keep uprooting your own progress. And you can be ordinary, but if you stay consistent, the math of compounding will eventually crown you victorious. That's one of the few fair systems in life. Time rewards discipline, not genius. The great irony is that compounding demands the one thing society trains you to avoid: stillness. Every advertisement, every headline, every influencer tells you to act, to react, to do something now. But wealth doesn't work like that. Wealth rewards inactivity when others are restless. It rewards those who can watch others chase excitement while they quietly build. The world calls that boring. I call it intelligent. If you ever want proof of compounding's power, look at Warren Buffett. The man made more than 90% of his wealth after the age of 60, not because his investments suddenly got smarter, but because they had time to grow. The same principle applies to you. Even modest returns, given enough time, create extraordinary outcomes. The problem is, most people never stay in the game long enough to see it happen. They sell too early, buy too late, or change strategy the moment discomfort appears. The truth is, compounding isn't just a financial principle, it's a moral one. It teaches you patience, humility, restraint. It humbles your ego by reminding you that growth happens without your constant involvement. It punishes impulsiveness and rewards quiet discipline. It forces you to confront your desire for control and to replace it with trust. Trust in the process, in time, in arithmetic itself. And that's why once you reach that first $500,000, the smartest thing you can do is stop interrupting it. Let it breathe. Let it multiply. Check it occasionally, but don't meddle with it. Money, when left alone in good assets, works harder than you ever could. But if you keep dragging it from one idea to the next, it never has the chance to grow. So the next time you feel the urge to act, to tinker, to do something with your investments, remember this: compounding only works for the patient, and time only favors those who respect it. Leave your money alone long enough, and one day it will return the favor. One of the greatest misunderstandings about wealth is this idea that the more you earn, the richer you become. It sounds logical, but it's completely false. The world is filled with people who earn large incomes and stay broke. Not because they don't make enough, but because they've never learned to live below their means. They think the solution to every financial problem is more, when the real answer is less. More income doesn't fix bad habits, it amplifies them. If you can't control yourself with $50,000 a year, you'll lose control faster at $500,000. The truth is, wealth isn't about what you bring in. It's about what you keep. That's why living below your means isn't just a financial tactic, it's a philosophy. It's a way of saying, I refuse to let lifestyle inflation rob me of my freedom. The moment your spending grows with your income, you've built a prison with nicer furniture. You may have a bigger house, fancier meals, and a more expensive car, but your obligations grow right along with them. And before you know it, you're back to where you started, working for bills, not freedom. Most people never understand this because they're trapped in comparison. They measure success not by progress, but by proximity. Proximity to someone else's lifestyle. They see a neighbor upgrade their car and feel compelled to match it. They see a colleague take a vacation and think, I deserve that too. What they don't realize is that comparison is a form of quiet slavery. It ties your sense of worth to someone else's choices. And the moment you start spending to prove something, you've already surrendered your financial independence. Living below your means doesn't mean living in deprivation. It means living intentionally. It's about recognizing that happiness and consumption aren't the same thing. You don't need to buy every comfort to enjoy life. You just need to remove the stress that comes from overcommitting yourself. A modest life lived on your own terms is far richer than an extravagant life financed by fear. I've met plenty of people with big houses who are miserable because their mortgage owns them. And I've met people with modest homes who sleep peacefully because they own every inch of it. It takes a certain maturity to understand that simplicity is a form of sophistication. It's easy to spend. It takes wisdom to restrain yourself. The crowd equates spending with success, but the truly successful equate restraint with strength. They know that the fewer financial obligations they have, the more freedom they possess. Every unnecessary expense is a tiny chain, and those chains add up. The car payment, the credit card bill, the upgrade you didn't need, each one steals a little piece of your independence. If you look at the people who build lasting wealth, the ones who stay wealthy, not just look at, you'll notice a common thread. They live far beneath their potential means. They could buy more, but they don't. They could show off, but they prefer silence. They're not obsessed with appearing rich because they're too busy becoming rich. That's the difference between those who rise and those who just spin in place. The point is simple. Freedom has a cost, and that cost is discipline. Every dollar you save below your means buys back a fraction of your time, your choice, your peace of mind. That's why I say wealth is less about accumulation and more about control. Control over your habits, your desires, and ultimately your life. If you can live below your means and stay content, you've already beaten 90% of people. Because while they're chasing appearances, you're building independence. And that's the quiet victory most never achieve. The ability to need less and live more. There comes a point in your financial life when you have to make a fundamental shift in how you think about money. You have to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an owner. The consumer mindset is built on emotion. It's about desire, impulse, comfort, and identity. The ownership mindset is built on rationality. It's about patience, productivity, and control. One spends for pleasure, the other invests for permanence. And that single distinction, that mental pivot from consuming to owning, separates those who struggle from those who eventually become free. Every dollar you earn is a choice, a fork in the road. You can spend it and let it disappear, or you can direct it towards something that will work for you. Most people choose the first path because it's easy and immediately gratifying. The dopamine hits the moment the purchase happens, new clothes, new gadgets, a dinner out. But that satisfaction fades as quickly as it comes. Ownership, on the other hand, feels slow and invisible at first. You buy an index fund, a piece of real estate, or a small business, and nothing exciting happens. No one congratulates you. But quietly in the background, those assets start to generate income, appreciate in value, and compound. Over time, they create a sense of calm that consumption never can. The calm that comes from knowing you're no longer trading your time for survival. The problem is that society glorifies the consumer and hides the owner. It wants you buying, not building. Every system, marketing, credit, entertainment, is designed to keep you dependent. It convinces you that your value lies in what you buy rather than what you own. But the moment you see through that illusion, you start reclaiming your power. Because ownership isn't just about money, it's about autonomy. The person who owns assets has leverage, and leverage is what frees you from the tyranny of circumstance. When you own productive assets, whether it's a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks, a rental property, or even a small share in a business, you've built a team of invisible workers. These assets don't call in sick. They don't need motivation, and they don't stop working when you're asleep. Every dollar invested in ownership is a worker that never complains, never rests, and never forgets its purpose to make more dollars. Consumers spend their workers on fleeting pleasures. Owners recruit more of them for the long haul. And here's where it becomes philosophical. Thinking like an owner forces you to change your relationship with time. Consumers live in the present. Owners live in the future. A consumer asks, what can I enjoy right now? An owner asks, what will this decision buy me 10 years from now? That's why ownership requires maturity, because it's about delayed gratification on a grand scale. You're trading momentary excitement for lasting independence. You're choosing the quiet dignity of control over the loud insecurity of impulse. What people forget is that ownership doesn't require millions. It just requires direction. You can start with a few $100s invested wisely, or a skill that generates passive income. The amount doesn't matter as much as the mindset. Once you start thinking like an owner, you start seeing opportunities everywhere. Every dollar, every idea, every hour becomes potential capital. You begin to measure success not by how much you can spend, but by how much you can make work for you. Eventually, you reach a point where your assets begin to buy back your time. That's the real dividend of ownership, freedom. You're no longer forced to sell your hours just to survive. Your money, your investments, your ideas, they go to work every day quietly earning on your behalf. That's when wealth stops being a number and becomes a state of mind. So if you want lasting wealth, stop playing the role of a consumer in someone else's story and start writing your own as an owner. Because in the end, every dollar you spend disappears, but every dollar you own multiplies your future. At some point in the pursuit of money, you have to stop and ask yourself the question most people never ask. What am I really chasing? Because if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life running toward a finish line that keeps moving. You'll tell yourself you're doing it for security or family or peace. But what you're really doing is feeding an endless cycle of wanting more. And the great paradox is this: the more you get, the less it satisfies you. The game never ends until you redefine the purpose of playing. The real purpose of money isn't accumulation, it's liberation. It's the ability to wake up and know that your choices are your own. When you reach that first level of independence, around $500,000 of smartly invested capital, something remarkable happens. You realize you no longer have to say yes to things you hate. You no longer have to tolerate mediocrity, compromise your principles, or sell your time to people you don't respect. That's what freedom feels like. Not yachts and mansions, but the quiet dignity of choice. Most people misunderstand wealth because they think it's about luxury. It's not. It's about control. It's about removing the financial anxiety that dictates your behavior. True wealth isn't measured by how many things you can afford. It's measured by how few things control you. A man earning modestly but free from debt and dependence is far richer than a high earner living under pressure, fear, and constant obligation. And freedom doesn't require billions. It requires enough to cover your needs, enough to protect your time, enough to choose your direction. That's why the pursuit of more can become a trap. The person obsessed with reaching 10 million often sacrifices the very thing money was supposed to give them, peace. They work themselves into exhaustion, trading all their time for a goal that keeps expanding. They mistake motion for progress, and in doing so, they lose the point of the entire exercise. Charlie Munger once said, "It's not greed that drives the world, but envy." And that's painfully true. People think they're chasing success, but they're often just trying to keep up with someone else's idea of it. They're not accumulating freedom, they're collecting comparisons. But when you finally break free from that, when you stop measuring your life by external metrics, you start to live differently. You realize how little you actually need to be content and how much you've already been overlooking. The beauty of reaching financial independence isn't in what you can buy, it's in what you can refuse. You can refuse nonsense. You can refuse toxic work. You can refuse to trade your integrity for a paycheck. You can finally align your actions with your values because money is no longer dictating your decisions. You are, and that's when you understand what wealth really is. Not the accumulation of stuff, but the subtraction of pressure. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes once you stop chasing endless growth for its own sake. You start to see money not as an end goal, but as a tool for a better life, not a bigger one. You stop asking, how much can I make? And start asking, how much is enough for me to live well, think clearly, and sleep peacefully? That's a question most people never answer because they're afraid of what it implies, that maybe the race was never necessary in the first place. So yes, aim for $500,000. Build it with discipline, patience, and purpose. But remember why you're doing it. You're not chasing numbers, you're chasing freedom. Because once you have enough to live on your terms, you'll realize the real reward was never the money. It was the power to finally stop running. So stop chasing numbers and start chasing wisdom. Build the habits that lead to your first $500,000. Save relentlessly, invest patiently, live simply.